Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Prestool. I hope you're doing well today. And we are going to be going over tennis. We're going to be doing a sports and time motion analysis for the sport. We're going to go over some background and some rules. Generally, for singles game, two people total, the player who wins the coin toss or the spin of the racket has to choose to be a server or a receiver, and they have to choose which side of the net to perform on. Weather does play a factor into that. For example, they don't want to start on the side where the sun is directly staring into their face. When it comes to service of the ball, both feet have to be behind the baseline and inside the center mark in a single sideline. If it's not, that is a foot fault and the server will lose a point. You have to toss the ball into the air and strike it before it touches the ground. You need to serve the ball across the net in a diagonal fashion and then cross the diagonal court. You have to start on the right court in every game. After the first point, you're able to alternate court and alternate sides. And any striking of the ball upon a line, that is considered fair and in. So if it just touches the white of the line, that is a good point. Player or team has to win 4 points in order to win the game. The game can start at 0-0, and then the 0 point in tennis is called love. Then you got 1 point, which is 15, second point, which is 30, third point 40, the fourth point is game. However, there's a situation where players can get into the 40-40 situation, that is the deuce. So in order to win that situation, you have to win the AD shot or the advantage shot, and then win a second consecutive shot. There are situations where the opposing player, for example, oh, this guy won the AD, but this guy won the second shot. So it goes back to deuce and deuce, and it only ends when somebody has won two consecutive shots. All right. Now we'll look at some tennis terminology. So a backhand shot. So for example, right-handed player like that from the left side of a right-handed player, or the right side of a left-handed player. The stroke or the forehand is the stroke that's used to hit the ball on the right side of the right handy and the left side of the left-hander. A lob is a high arching shot that lands near the baseline. Those are strategic shots that are generally closer to the net or generally closer to the baseline where you want a player to get out of the position or you want them to be able to not reach the ball at a certain position. Now, the serve obviously is a stroke to use to put the ball into place at the beginning of each point. The volley is a stroke used to hit the ball in the air before it has bounced. And the rally is to hit the ball back and forth for long periods of time. Now, when it comes to the physical demands of tennis players, now, depending on what type of court you play, that will have a factor in total distance, mean rally duration. Just to begin, mean rally duration for international players is shortest on grass courts with 4.3 seconds, followed by hard court, which is 5.6, and clay court for 7.1. But just to analyze the physical demands of a tennis player, for example, we'll look at serve speed. They'll start off at 182 and then 149 to be their first strike at 182 kilometers per hour. That is generally a faster pace serve that will try to just win them the point right there. But if that does not happen, their second serve is generally going to be a slower shot, more of a strategic point, if you will. Now we'll begin with the clay surfaces. They are made of crushed shale, stone, or brick. This is a surface that will slow down the ball and produce a slow and high bounce compared to other surfaces. This makes rallies generally longer and more suitable for baseline players and players who like to play more tactically and use a lot of spin and find great angles. This surface will absorb the shock and also allow players to slide into place rather than coming to a complete stop. And as mentioned, rallies are generally longer. This surface takes away many of the advantages of, say, people who like to use big serves, making it harder for people who rely heavily on their serve to dominate the clay. One of the more famous ones in tennis is the French Open. Now, the mean rally duration for international players on a clay court is 7.1 seconds, mean stroke rally 4.8. Work to rest ratio is 1 to 2 to 1 to 3.5. Average heart rate 159 beats per minute. Total distance covered is roughly 2,200 to 2,567 meters. Now we'll look at the hard courts. As the name suggests, hard courts are made of uniform, rigid materials with an acrylic surface layer. They're faster than clay, but not as fast as grass. Hard surface courts have low energy absorption to clay, so it will make the tennis ball bounce higher and move faster. This surface is very popular across the world as it generally gives a good, even, and all around playing experience, if you will, and offers consistency that is not found within clay and grass courts. Although the speed of play on hard courts can depend on the exact material used, they are generally faster than clay, but not as fast as grass. The mean rally duration of a hard court is 5.6 seconds. Mean work to rest ratio varies between 1 to 3.5 and 1 to 5.6. Shots per rally is 3.9, rest is 20.2 seconds. Total match time is typically 60 minutes. Heart rate is on average 164 beats per minute. Total distance covers roughly 2,227 to 2,253 meters. Now we tackle the grass courts. This is a synthetic grass surface with the appearance of grass and in many ways plays similar glass. The big thing with grass courts is that the ball is going to move quickly and generally keep low. So sometimes a shot will be hit and players will not go and reach that shot because they know it's not feasible to reach after that due to the low length of it. The ball will move through quickly and generally keep low, but it is also a good service for all standards of players to learn on as the bounce is even and it provides a more consistent level of spin. This fast surface also provides an advantage to players with big serves, as previously mentioned, with the low level nature of the ball and its skidding patterns and how it generally doesn't rise above knee level. The mean rally duration for international players on grass courts is 4.3 seconds. And the work to rest ratio is 1 to 3.7 to 1 to 5.0. Total distance cover is going to be roughly 2,000 meters to 2,133 meters. Now we look on the average tennis match activity. Your duration of a tennis match is roughly more than an hour, but your total playing time during the match, is roughly 20 to 30% on clay courts and roughly 10 to 15% on court surfaces. Your tennis player is generally going to run at an average of 3 meters per shot and a total of 8 to 12 meters in the course of a given point. When it comes to directional changes, there's an average of 4 when you're in between. About 80% of all strokes are played within 2.5 meters of the player's ready position. About 10% of those strokes are made with 2.5 to 4.5 meters of movement, with a primarily sliding type movement pattern, and fewer than 5% of strokes are made with more than 4.5 meters of movement and a running type of movement pattern. Game intensity, as alluded to on this slide, with total playing time, your mean heart rate for trained players is roughly between 140 and 160. Your mean maximum heart rates are 60 to 80. Your VO2 maxes are generally 60 to 70. So your heart rate's not going to get to a super intense level compared to other sports such as hockey or football. Now, there are intense, sharp movements and quick time reactions that involve or that are part of the sport, but your heart rate is not going to be as high as, say, a hockey player. There's also differences to heart rate that factor into playing surface, that is whether a player is serving or returning. Now, when it comes to anaerobic and aerobic demands, various factors come into play when players have to use their aerobic functions and their anaerobic functions. Slower surfaces, type 3 balls, longer match duration, baseline play that will focus on your aerobic capacities, and fast surfaces, type 1 play or type 1 balls, shorter match duration, and your serve and volley play will focus on your anaerobic demands. As mentioned previously with your aerobic and anaerobic demands, elite tennis players should have a high fitness level to handle matches up to 3 hours or shorter matches, followed by speedy recovery. Players should be focusing on footwork and movement drills and include many accelerations, decelerations, and changes to direction with appropriate work to rest ratios rather than straight line continuous running. Now we look at some common injuries. The most common overuse tennis related injury is the internal impingement in superior labrum, anterior to posterior, or the slap tears in the shoulder, tendinopathy in the medial and the lateral elbow, rotator cuffs with your elbows, mentioned that already, rests, so your extensor carpi, your knees, like thigh muscle strain, knee ligament strains, your meniscus tears, ankle sprains, ankle fractures, and with your trunk, your abdominal muscle strains, your rib muscle strains. Now, as mentioned already, high rate of overuse injuries are observed in players who play on multiple surfaces compared to players who play primarily on one surface. So, for example, if you switch from the French Open, which is on clay, to the French Open to the Wimbledon, French Open's on clay, Wimbledon's on grass. Data has shown that 61% of injuries that occur during Wimbledon were sustained prior to Wimbledon. So switching between courts does have a factor in that. Now we look at some different types of tennis players. We'll look at the big server first. He's a player with a fast first serve who will often win points within their first two shots. So you get your aces, your unreturned serves, and so forth. Then you have a player who relies on the serve and the volley. So the serve and the volley is their primary tactic. You're attacking baseliner. So you're a player who likes to dictate the play from the baseline, right over here. Your counterpuncher who's comfortable playing a defense. They use their ability to frustrate their opponent and choose their moment to turn your defense into an attacking offensive position. And then an all-court type of player, they're using a lot of different shots, and they will adapt and use shots that are best matched to exploit their opponent's weaknesses. Now we'll come into some KPIs. Tennis, while it may not be as physically demanding compared to other sports, it has some very intriguing physical demands. You need proper reaction time. You need to be able to have efficient stroke power. You be able to stroke the ball easily or at a certain angle, height level, stroke spin, how much spin you've got on the ball. And then you get into some of the mental and the more non-tennis serving related motions, your ability to adapt to certain movements, your aggressiveness on the ball, your determination and endurance do come hand in hand. Your ability to determine to get to the ball and to go on through those long stretches of potentially 3-hour tennis matches. Your patience and composure as well, your precision on shots and your ability to volley or match a shot, your assertiveness or your dominance or your confidence in being able to make your presence known. You need to be agile and quick, but on top of that, you need imagination to come up with on the fly shots. Maybe you're jumping in the air, you have to smack the ball in between your legs while your behind's facing the player. You need to have that imagination to be able to defeat your opponent. And those are some of the KPIs. Now we look at some of the training mechanisms. So, and analysis of tennis matches generally determines the average points. And analysis of tennis matches kind of shows how to train your player. So you can have a preparation period where you have a low intensity, high volume, and a low specificity of training. For example, in this kind of preparation phase, you can have 3 to 4 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions, with your main focus being on increasing the endurance of your tennis player. Then you go into your pre-competition, your competition period. You would want to focus on some high intensity, low volume, high specificity of training style. So for example, you would want 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions or about 1 to 2 weeks before your projected peak performance. In this pre-competition and competition period, you want to focus on increasing your strength and power. With the preparation period, you focus on your endurance. With the pre-competition and competition period, strength and power. You want to also focus on cardiovascular training. You can implement distance running, so 15 to 30 minutes at a desired level, intensity level. You don't have to go too crazy, such as football players would maybe on a cornerback. And you can also implement interval training to build up your endurance. You can also apply agility training and plyometrics or tennis specific movement training. So if you want to perform on grass or a slightly cushioned surface, if possible, or if possible as well, you can work on the different surfaces to get yourself ready and maybe prevent injuries in the future. As well, flexibility training has to be performed every single day. And now, in that vein of training, we'll look at a former tennis player sample program, David DeLucia. So he goes over his hardcore training. He did 2 to 3 times a week for strength, cardio 1 time a week at 85% of their max for 10 minutes. And they did 3 to 4 or intervals 3 to 4 times a week. This was more of their, if we go back, their mixture of their preparation to pre-competition where they focus on strength and endurance and agility. Now, when it came to the Australian Open, as mentioned here, tennis specific movements. For him, he just played tennis, and that's what a lot of players could potentially do. They only train non-tennis based movements after the conclusion of the tournament. During that time, strength 1 to 2 times a week, mainly maintenance cardio one time a week at 75% max for 20 minutes, and intervals 1 to 2 times a week, and agility 1 to 2 times a week. And that's just some of the potential training mechanisms that you can use and implement for tennis players. And that will be all for today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.